How's it going, everyone? It's Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I completed the Wolong Fallen Dynasty demo. This is the final demo before the release of the game on March 3rd. It is coming to the Xbox Series X, PC, and PlayStation, and it is going to be on Game Pass, which is a huge thumbs up from me. If you like the content, please like, share, and subscribe, and let's dive right in. So, my thoughts after playing the demo. In my head, all I could think about was Neo and Sekiro had a baby, and it is Wolong Fallen Dynasty. If you like the combat of Neo, just know that they've simplified it a bit, not too much, and they've kind of removed the different stances. You are able to switch weapons quickly, you have magical abilities, and you also have weapon art abilities known as martial arts that are really powerful spirit attacks that are there to break posture. Now, the reason why I call it Sekiro, or it has like that marriage with Sekiro, is because there's an emphasis on parrying. And if you do not like to parry, you are going to hate this game. I felt like when fighting some of the bosses, and even some of the sub-bosses, I had noticed that regardless if I was at their moral rank or higher, I was not doing enough damage, even with pretty good gear. So, what I did quickly learn is that if you parry a critical art and you break their spirit posture, it will absolutely open them up to an incredible amount of damage, which pretty much tells me, and this happens in every fight by the way, that you will need to get comfortable with parrying immediately. Like right now, and you'll have more than enough time during the tutorial part of the demo to get comfortable with that, because otherwise you are going to struggle. And I have seen a lot of complaining on Twitter about the difficulty of this game, and it's mainly because a lot of people want to roll around, and that's just not feasible. It's a good way to get out of danger, but you'll notice in one of the boss fights, I am spamming attack and barely doing anything, and we are the same moral rank. Actually, I think I'm like a level higher than him. I am working to break his spirit gauge, and really it's parrying that does the most. And really, if you parry a critical art, you break a huge chunk of it. And then once that enemy is broken, you can then heavy attack, and you'll do a large chunk of damage. I think that can be kind of frustrating if you're a new player. I think that can be really intimidating, and I'm sorry to say that if you're not comfortable with parrying, if you weren't comfortable with that in Sekiro, which for a lot of people was like a rhythm game, this game is kind of different, because if you played Elden Ring, you'll know that, you know, one of the most frustrating things about boss fights in Elden Ring was that delay. You're going to see a lot of that in Wolong Fallen Dynasty. The other really important thing to remember about this game, this reason why I'm so excited and I had such a good time, was exploration is so much fun, because there's this huge incentive to find all of the battle flag placements, because as you find them, they set your moral rank, and the higher your moral rank, the better you're going to be, or at least the better left off you're going to be when you fight tougher enemies and bosses. And it's such a crucial thing in this game that you do your due diligence and explore, because there's a lot of nooks and crannies, especially in the demo area, and it'll get you really comfortable with moving around certain places, getting above enemies, getting around them. You don't necessarily have to engage everyone if you don't want to. I do recommend you, however, fight a lot of people, but your moral rank matters. And it's also a good indicator, because you're going to see enemies that are going to have higher moral ranks than you, but it's okay if they're a few levels above you. Now, if they're like 10 to 15, do not engage them unless you are super comfortable with parrying and dodging and moving around. You will absolutely get killed. It is not a joke. You will absolutely get bodied. I remember one of the NPCs told me, he was like, "We should leave." And I said no in one of my other playthroughs, and I ended up just getting rocked in 2-3 hits, which is kind of frustrating considering I thought the gear that I had was pretty good. With Wolong Fallen Dynasty, I am going to say that in terms of difficulty, I think this is easier than Neo and easier than some of the Souls games. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the NPC partners level with you. So as your morale rank goes up, they will equal that. And they do pretty good damage. They can solo a lot of enemies. And on top of that, they're just perfect as distractions. So if you want to help gank an enemy that was giving you trouble, just have the NPC aggro and you will be just fine. I think one of the other things is because of the magical abilities in this game that don't just do actions against enemies, they also have passive abilities and active abilities. You can really build a kit that can make you practically unstoppable and unkillable, because early on there's an ability in which every time you do an attack you heal, and it's not like for a significant amount, but based off the weapon you have, you can heal for a lot. I'm also going to say that NPCs can help make boss fights pretty trivial outside of the first tutorial boss, in which you're pretty much fighting him solo. Yeah, your NPC is there, but he's not really doing anything besides acting as a small distraction when you're getting hit. For the most part, they're just kind of sitting back and letting you do your thing. In Wolong, your NPC can pretty much draw aggro from some of these bosses, and you can just do insane damage to them. And sometimes, and this happened a couple times when I was fighting some of the bigger bosses, I had my NPC kind of draw them into a critical attack, and I just kind of stepped in front of it to parry so that I could break their spirit gauge and then do a ton of damage. That happened quite often. I did not die on any of the bosses outside of the tutorial one. That was it. Like, they literally give you indicators on screen, hints like, hey, here's what you're supposed to do. You need to deflect left and right when you receive an enemy attack. And then afterwards, when you break their gauge down, you want to do a spirit attack. You'll break into this animation, do a huge amount of damage, and then you're moving. And then after the first sub-boss in the second area, you're going to be given a divine blessing. And these things, think of them as the yokai abilities in Neo too. So as you attack, as you build up that gauge, you're able to do two things. You press Y and A if you're using an Xbox controller, and that'll be a divine blessing attack, right? And that can do incredible area damage to a boss and can honestly turn the tide of a fight. Or you can press X and A, which will then create a passive ability that's not just for you, but for your co-op partner or your NPC partner. And depending on what your divine blessing is, that can be a massive boost for you. So this game makes you incredibly capable. And if you are an individual who has always been on the fence about whether or not you want to dive into a Souls-like game, I honestly think Wolong is kind of the friendliest one, because as soon as you start getting good gear, as soon as you start leveling up your weapon, and if you've played Neo before, every time you get a new piece of armor, equip it. You more than likely, until later in the game, you're not going to get really good gear sets, so as soon as you see something that's a higher level, just put it on. It's going to really help out when you're fighting some of these bosses. You'll notice that like a lot of the damage you're taking is really low, especially if your morale level is really high. But I felt like while playing Wolong, it is essentially the easiest to play, especially if you want to play with an NPC. Even if you don't play with an NPC, as long as you're okay with exploration and you're not overly aggressive sometimes, because some of the martial art abilities with some of the weapons can do a lot of AoE damage, and then others are just like attacks that can create separation for you, kind of like a dodge. But this game plays a lot like Neo. Essentially, if you're new to that game, you want to kind of create distance and then shoot and clear out enemies with arrows and guns and knives and stuff, long range stuff, and then kind of 1v1 everybody. I just felt like this is the most accessible of all of them, and that kind of seems crazy to say, but when you have this kit, when you're starting to build your kit, you're just so powerful. It's almost ridiculous how much damage you can do, especially if you are a higher morale rank and you utilize the correct magical abilities and you don't forget to equip better gear as you move along. If I was going to recommend this game, I would say try the demo out first. Get comfortable with parrying. If you just don't like parrying and it just doesn't sit well with you, I would probably say don't pick it up. But if you are a fan of Nioh and Sekiro, you are going to love this game. I had a great time playing through it. The demo took me around 2 hours, and then I immediately went back and just tried to solo certain places and just kind of mess around to see the types of damage I could do, types of builds I could create. I just found myself enamored with what Team Ninja has created, and I'm really hoping that this game does well. I hope that it gets a lot of downloads, and I really hope that this does well in sales. Those are my thoughts and impressions on the Wolong Fallen Dynasty demo. I'm really looking forward to the final product. I feel like this is going to be a banger of a game, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I hope you have a good one.